And it's Esther with, again, the Taking Care of Her Business series. And today I'm having a sit-down chat with Flo Awolaja, who is a creative entrepreneur who's now started her own business as well. And she is going to be telling us a lot more about how she got started, her creative background, and where she is today with her business. So hi, Flo. Thanks for taking the time.
Hello. Hi.
Really appreciate it.
Thank you.
And tell us about your background and how you got started creatively and what led to you starting your business.
I think my artistic background has come from my parents.
Great.
And my mother's a printer, and my father was a draftsman. He does designs TV, electronics. So I was always, as I say, the household was always full of papers, pencils. So my siblings and I were forever scribbling and colouring in. So it really was a household that was just full of colour, and we were encouraged to just draw, even in picture books.
Wonderful. Yeah. Brilliant. So you were always creating or building and doing something then in the house.
Well, we always sketched. All my brother's a designer, my sister's a sculptor. And so within the household, my parents are Nigerian, so we were always colouring. We were always encouraged to draw and be creative, always.
Brilliant.
So naturally, as we progressively we got older, when we got to school, it just carried on. It just carried on from there.
Yeah, great. And how did you then use this when you were all grown up and going out into the big bad world?
I like the way you say grown up. Good grief. I think, you know what, there is something to be said about a teacher, and I have to give my kind of thanks really to my art teacher, an inspirational lady.
Great.
And when I was in year 9, you tend to kind of think, oh, you know it all, but she took me under her wing and actually said to me, you're good. And when you're sort of get up to your sort of exam year, you don't quite think you're as good as you think you are. But when a teacher says you're good, you start to think, oh, I must be. Sorry?
I must have something good.
Well, it is. I must have something. And she kind of took me under her wing and said, have you ever thought about graphic design? And my first thing was, what's that? And so I had a look at it, but I actually liked drawing. And the only person I had to convince was my dad. But when you're from a Nigerian household, you're either a doctor, a lawyer. So to say to Dad, well, actually, I'm not going to be a vet. I'm going to be a graphic designer. Yeah. And he said to me, first thing he said is, what's that? So I had to explain to him. And as parents, they're a different generation. He said, let me sleep on it. And I was like, God, I hope he sleeps well. So after doing that, the next day he woke up and he said, I was sort of like really pottering around the house and thinking, am I going to get a decision? And the only thing he said to me was, as long as you're happy. And I think that is such a good attitude to have. My dad was a very measured person. And as far as he's concerned, as long as his children are happy, that was it. And so that was it, really. At 16, I kind of set off on my path. I went to a foundation college.
Okay.
And then I did my art and design, which was like, the best thing all day, every day, with your little art bin, your space full of paint, full of, you name it, I had it. And all day, dressed in overalls, painting, designing, best thing.
Right, brilliant. So from there then, I take it that you then went into having this graphic design career, and how long were you doing that for?
Well, I applied straight from, when I finished my foundation, I did my BA, and there really, that's where my skills were honed. Upon leaving, I was actually headhunted for the BBC, where I was only meant to be there for 2 weeks.
Right.
I was there 4 years. And in all that time, I, worked on the Radio Times magazines. I worked as a researcher. I worked as a designer. But there's something about me, even when I was in my very early 20s, that I wasn't destined to just come in and collect my money.
No.
I spoke to a researcher, and I said to her, how long have you been here? And she said, I've been here 18 years. And I kind of swallowed. I was like, I could see this kind of long row that I'd have to travel, and this at the end was this chair that would have my name on it. But before I got to that chair, I'd have to go through all these hoops, and I was like, I'm not having that. So I handed in my notice.
Right.
Handed in my notice, and I decided to go freelancing. Much to my parents, just my mum, she was like, "Oh my God, how are you going to manage? You've just got a flat." And I was like, "I'll do it.
Yeah.
It is going to happen." So I never thought I wouldn't do it. I just thought, right, freelancing, what does that mean? And I did. The next day I went out and spoke to friends, and I went to a company called Dorling Kindersley.
Right.
In Covent Garden, when you're a young adult, money in your pocket, I was skint every week. Because Friday, when you're working with young people in an environment that really is fast-paced, it's fun. I'd been given a position as an art editor. I had a series of books to design, and I had about, there was a budget. It was me. And out of that, I had to art direct, commission. That gives you a lot of skills. And it really was a good experience. I would advise anybody to be freelance. It really, really was.
Great. So what changes did you have to go through from your freelance design, graphic design career then to move you towards, thinking about starting up your own business? What was going on between that time of your freelance career, being a graphic designer, and getting to start your own business? What happened there?
I think the advent of technology and computers, and graphic design is a skill. Don't let anybody tell you that. Everyone says, I think we can do it. Oh, I just got a computer, knock something up. Well, there's a difference. Well, it's like saying someone, you get a trained mechanic. Oh, I can fix this car. And someone says, I'll tinker with it. There really is a difference. And I think people have to realize that. We don't spend 3, 4, 5 years at art school just to be kind of sitting at the back. We're creative. So out of that, I still was quite particular with my skill, but technology was coming in and the margins were getting shorter and shorter because companies wanted to take shortcuts. They said, well, look, we've got someone who we can knock up a logo. Well, there's knocking up a logo and there's thinking about how that logo sits in with the company. There are two different things there. And I think that's what people have to realize, that comes from someone who is a creative. They bring that thinking to the table because they're not thinking of the end product. They're thinking, well, how does this logo work with the company? What colors is it? What do you want to say? So there are lots of semantics that are going on in the background that, I'm sorry, Joe Blogs doesn't just get. So out of that, people started saying, well, we can do it cheaper. And I'm like, I'm very kind of, well, okay, if you can do it cheaper, you do it. I'm not going to argue. If you're not going to pay me what I'm worth, and they come back to having the value. If you're not going to pay me what I'm worth, then I'm going to step back.
Great. In
that time, I had my son, and when you've got little ones, I was like, you know what? I want to spend as much time with him. So he was growing up, and we were having the best time. We literally, if I didn't want to work, I'd say, let's go to Greenwich, and we would take the boat, and we just go on a red bus. I'm born and bred in London, and until my son was born, I'd never been on a trip around London. So I said, any excuse. Packed his at the time the film was, what film it was, and we packed his lunch bag and come on, we set off on the day down to Greenwich. And it's things like that freelancing brings you. There is a real quality of life. But I'm also a realist. And if you're working and you're not having the same income coming in, there is going to be a mismatch. So this time my son had started primary school and he was going to juniors, and he saw all his friends' parents walking them to school. And one day we had a conversation and he says, Mommy, all my friends' mums walk them to school. And I'll tell you what, my little heart broke. So I decided that something has to give. And again, it's something that happened in teaching where he came home and he said something had happened that day, and I really wasn't happy. So I said, if I'm going to know what happens in the system, I'm going to have to be inside that system. So I made the switch.
Okay.
I made the switch to retrain as an art teacher. So I underwent my PGCE for a whole year. But even in that time, the difference it made to my son was that Mummy was around and we were walking to school and we had journeys. And I made it very clear that I would walk him to school, and I would definitely be there for him at home. So I made that decision. And it was funny, when he got to year 6, he said, I'd like to walk him on my own. And I remember coming home from school, from the teacher training, and I watched him. I followed him in the car, going home with his friends, skipping on the wall.
Right.
And I thought that's what it was about. So I really enjoyed having that time with him. And then it was a question of just applying for teaching jobs, and that was it.
Great. So the teaching jobs gave you that interim, that time with your son, that feeling of, you know, enjoying him growing up, but knowing also the income, and that you were still using your skills in some capacity as well. So, okay, the business. Tell us about the business, and, you know, name and what it does, and what your aims are as a Black woman in business as well.
The first thing is a business. I think if you're an entrepreneur, by definition, then you are business minded, and I think that doesn't happen overnight. It is one of the things that it follows you. You just need to have that opportunity. So whilst in teaching, I was doing art in the daytime, and then, you know, I was in teaching for about, I'd say, good 10 years.
Right.
And then my son, obviously grown up at this time, he became very ill, and so that made me really reflect. And whilst we were at home convalescing with him, I had some fabrics, which, if I run back a bit, I'd gone to Ghana for a holiday.
Okay.
and I brought back lots of fabrics. They were just in the house. I didn't know what to do with them. But when he was ill, I kind of looked at them and thought, ooh. So I started cutting them up, you know, cut the fabrics up and just making small collages. And
right.
and I found it very therapeutic. So we sat talking, and then one became 2 little frames, and 2 became 3. So I had like 18. And one day I had them on the floor in the front room, my mother's house, and my son walked in. He just said, "No, Mum, this can't go on. You can't." He said, "Where did you hide them?" He said, and he went, "Grandma knows. Grandma knows where they are. They were behind the chair. They were under the bed." And he said, "Look, you've got something here. So, you know, young people." He photographed them. He said, "Wait, what's this?" Put it onto Instagram, and before you knew it, there were all these little likes and pings. Oh. I still wasn't convinced, but he was like, "Mum, you need to do something." I was like, "Oh, all right, whatever." So I did. And then, you know, forward to Christmas of the year 2015.
Yes.
And I was having, you know, you have downs, and I wasn't feeling very well, so I was taking some time out. And then my friend was having a breakfast brunch.
Right.
And I asked, could I come along just to be inspired? And her talk was about authenticity and being authentic and being a real you. So I took some of the frames that I had. I don't know what told me to take, but I took them. And when I got to the event space, she stood up and she said, "Oh, I've got a special guest here, and I'd like her to talk about her work." But you know what? Wow. When everybody turned round, I turned round as well. I was like, well, they're not talking about me. So all these heads turned to, and I turned round. I was like, and she said one day, she said, "Oh, Flo, can you come up?" I tell you what, my knees were knocking. So wow. I went to the front and I started speaking about my journey. And then people there were saying, "Oh, you know, you're really good at this. You should, you know, how do you think about selling or making your work?" And I was like, never done it. Yeah. And a lady who I'd never met said, "Oh, I'd like you to commission me 2 bits." And she said, "Well, how much?" And that I was like, oh gosh.
You have to do it.
We're talking serious here now, so I'm going to have to get real. And I gave her a prize, and she came back to me a year later. She held it. I thought, the price I've told her, I'm going to do it. Yeah. And she didn't just order 1, she ordered 2.
Okay.
So all I asked her was, "What colours do you want?" And the rest, that was it, really. That was it. So
from there, you kept on creating and doing, and obviously.
Yes, I just started to experiment really with, because I also print make. So I was actually print making and doing different samples of stitching, you know, fabrics together. Yes. You know, some of them I just left as unframed. Some of them I framed. I think there's one behind where you can see, if you look, there's a blue one. That's the one that is one of my favourites.
Okay.
And you can see the background. You can see a little flag in the background.
I can see the flag in the background, and the one. Oh wow! Okay, so
And so what I've got here, I can show you. You can see,
Yes.
if you look, you can see that's the very first piece I done to my mother.
Okay, you need to
That,
come a bit closer to the camera with it.
that
So,
was for her.
right, okay.
So all that is, collage pieces. So,
Yes.
and from there I started working, and people started noticing. And I had a friend. She said, "Oh, there's a gallery down the road of the theatre. They wanted someone for Black History Month, and they wondered if you would like to exhibit."
You do,
Well,
yeah.
I didn't think I had enough work, so I did. I exhibited, and what was meant to be a 2-month stint ended up being 6 months.
And it grew.
And it grew from there, yes.
Okay, so don't hold out on us anymore. What's the name of your business?
The name of the business I decided to call myself is Maverick Artz. And for me, the reason to choose about Maverick, because Maverick denotes someone who is going to go on a limb and isn't going to kind of follow the status quo. And I've kind of done that all my life, really. In some way or another, I've been the one that's slightly different. But sometimes you need to just grow into yourself. And I'm beginning to do that.
And that point you're making about grow into yourself, and even as you were saying earlier about being authentic, I mean, as a Black woman developing and designing and even being a creative, I mean, how have you found that in terms of any challenges, whether, challenges you can see, barriers, or even from a mindset point of view? I mean, what have you encountered, and how have you dealt with those?
I think first and foremost, you really have got to have the confidence of your ability. And and it is difficult because I almost sound contradictory, because one half of me says I'm not good enough, but at some point you have to believe you're good enough, and that should feed into what you're doing. I think as a Black woman, well, we suffer from being, as an artist, I always think I'm an artist, but you're also defined because you're a female, and you're also defined because you're Black. So you've got like 3 hurdles to climb over.
Yep.
And which is not easy, but I think, you know what, I am good, and I just push through. I push on through, and it's my confidence that actually carries me along as well. So I always say you're only as good as a job that you've just finished.
Yes.
I always try to make sure that whatever I do, is presentation is good, and the ideas. And I'm nothing. I'm a thinker. I'm definitely a thinker.
A creative thinker.
Oh yes, without a doubt, I'm definitely a creative thinker. Yes.
Brilliant. So what advice would you give to other Black women who maybe want to start their own business, or even want to go the creative route if they're starting out? What advice would you give them, from starting up to even dealing with those mental kind of barriers? I
think you must, and I'm going to say a big shout out to all my friends, family, my son, my best friend, social media. If you're on social media, be authentic, be you. Yeah. Don't kind of say you're one thing and then the product is totally different. I would definitely say go for it. At the end of the day, if we don't take the chance, what's the worst that can happen? It's going to be someone's going to say no. Yeah. So I really do think it's going for it and just being yourself. Try different ideas. Don't be afraid to experiment. Someone says no, you know what? That's fine. Someone else is going to say yes. And even me now, I'm learning all of that. I've just my design company has been going for about just over a year. Okay. But each one, I think, and people have told me, well, get your work out there, get yourself exposed. Yeah. Someone is going to see you. Someone is going to pick it up. I think it's something that Richard Branson said. He said, if somebody offers you the opportunity to do something, yes, and you're not sure you can't do it, just say, yeah, I'll do it. The rest, you, and he says it, you will learn on the way, and it's true. For every, I'd say, experience you have, you're going to learn something, and that's going to take you to the next step. Yes,
fantastic, brilliant, thank you. So, for the future, what can we expect to see from you, and where can anyone who's watching this come and see your work or learn more about what you're doing?
Well, I am on LinkedIn. I'm in LinkedIn as Flo Awolaja. You can follow me on there, and I as well as design, I also write, which is why I say I'm a creative, and I'm also a photographer. So you can find bits of my work on LinkedIn. I've got several blogs which I'm on there doing. I'm also on Twitter, right, under Maverick Artz. And I am in the process of now finally getting up that webpage.
Great.
I think I'm going to have to do it at some point, bite the bullet. We designers, we are our own worst enemy. So I will be contacting designers out there saying, can you design my webpage? It's time. And you can also contact me by email, which is my first and my last name, which is Flo Awolaja @hotmail.com. That'll be FLORAAWOLAJA @hotmail.com.
Brilliant. And any exhibitions coming up? Any events coming up that you're going to be featured at?
Oh my gosh! Without giving the game away, I have applied for an open exhibition in Bristol.
Okay.
So it is being, I think it's the Royal West of England Academy of Arts Open Exhibition. So I have applied there. So fingers crossed, my work may be exhibited there. And but yeah, there's lots of things coming up. I will definitely be getting that website and posting what I'll be doing on there. Yes. But if you follow me on Twitter, you're more than likely to pick up what I'm doing. Yeah.
And that is at Maverick Artz.
That's at Maverick Artz with a Z straight away. Besides, when you see the little profile, it'll be a little piece of fabric. That's me.
Great. All right. Thank you. Well, thank you so much for everything you said, for the advice, for telling us about what you went through, how you got there, and even the creative side of things. I think there's so much there that a lot of us can take from it, and that whole just having a go. And as you said, you know, you learn along the way. That's definitely some really valuable advice.
I think those are the first. I think that's what I would say to when you do so. I said, have a go. And don't be afraid if it doesn't work. That's all I can say, because at some point you will get up to the top of the hill and it'll be fun sliding down.
Brilliant. Well, we're going to leave with that image of us all sliding down. And
fantastic. Brilliant. Thank you.
All right.
Brilliant.
Well, thank you so much again, Flo.
Thank you, Esther. Thank you.
And I'm looking forward to seeing what you do. I know we'll be in contact in future.
Oh no, this is just the beginning. This is definitely just the beginning.
Oh, brilliant. And I know that, we'll all be looking forward to seeing your work. And you take care for now, and we'll catch up soon.
I will do. Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.